Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Essence of Plant Spirits webinar at the School of Natural Esoterics. My name is Emma Fitchett, and I am delighted to welcome fellow plant spirit healer and flower essence producer, Paul Martin Strode, to the webinar. Hi, Paul.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So today we are going to dive into the nature of plant spirits, but also vibrational remedies. So as I mentioned, Paul and I both create plant spirit essence ranges, and so we've been working with them for years, both in our healing modalities and also for our own healing processes, for our own spiritual practice, and for our connection to the plant spirits. So we thought we would share our experience, share what we've learned, and bearing in mind that what we are kind of sharing is our own perspectives and our own insights, etc. So my background is more shamanic and from esoterica and wisdom tradition. Paul is from a Celtic background. He's a druid, but he comes from the craniosacral therapist background as well. But we both work remotely in our healing practice with our plant spirit team. But we got to know our plant spirit team through working with plant spirit essences. So what these are, they're not tinctures. Okay, so a lot of people do get confused between what's a tincture and what's an essence. And so an essence is the bioresonance, the frequency of the plant, whereas a tincture contains the actual chemical constituents, the chemicals, the actual parts of the plant itself. The essence of a plant is the resonance of the plant. And so we can work with the frequency, the unique frequency pattern of those plants. And so just like us, each plant has this unique frequency through which its eternal aspect or its overarching Davic spirit, if you like, the spirit of the species of the plant can work or can communicate with us, because everything's frequency. And so through this particular frequency and unique frequency, the consciousness of the plant can work. And so when we take one of these essences, we ingest it. So you usually get an essence in a kind of a little bottle. This is from my essence range, but you can get smaller ones as well. When we take an essence, we're kind of integrating that frequency into our own energy field. And so this can help us to reorientate us at many different levels. It can help to bring balance and healing. But the way Paul and I work is that when we create these essences, we're working with the conscious intelligence, the spirit of the plant, to make the essences. And so that creates quite a dynamic essence. Lots of people do, actually. And there are many ways to make essences. But when you work with the conscious intelligence of the plant and the spirit of the plant, and you're inviting that spirit into the water, to imprint its frequency, its bandwidth of frequencies into the water, then you fix it with alcohol or apple cider vinegar. Then you've got this, it's almost like a telephone line, a communication channel to the plant spirit itself. Mm. I interact with and work with the plant spirits in this way for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, for my own kind of healing modality and my own spiritual practice, my own connection to my spirit team, but also because through these essences, I can work with them anytime. I can work with poisonous plants. I can work all the way through the winter when the power is not in the plants themselves outside. If it's too cold or wet to go outside, I can take the essence and still communicate and get to know a new plant spirit. And so for me, they're invaluable. And working in this way, I've got to know my plant spirit team in a big way, in a deep and intimate way, actually. And it's about forming relationships with plant spirits, because the way both Paul and I work is that we have a team of plant spirits who do particular jobs within our healing modality. And so we know exactly who does what, and we're just kind of like the orchestrator of the show, if you like. And and so it's through working with these essences that we've developed our plant spirit team. So apart from that, Paul, do you want to give us an insight into what drew you to working with plant spirit essences?
Yeah, what drew me to working with plant spirit essences is that well, I didn't really know anything about them. I wasn't drawn to them. I wasn't led to, well, I was probably led by the work that I was doing. I was a products manager for a healing program in 1998, 99 down in the West Country, and I was producing lots of the healing programs essences. They were light essences at the time. And so I was producing lots of these things, but I wasn't producing the tinctures, the mother tinctures. And when I saw that Jill Patterson, well, she taught me how to make the essences with the crystal essence method using astral structures and a crystal geode as opposed to a bowl. We don't cut the essences. We allow the flowers to still stay on the flowers, so they're called living essences or uncut essences. But I didn't know anything about batch. I didn't know anything about the flower essence world, and so I started down this route. I suppose led, but I certainly wasn't going out looking for it, and ended up making wildflower essences. We focused primarily on British essences or wildflowers. The very fact that we use the uncut method allows us to gain essences from bluebells and orchids, which you wouldn't necessarily get from the traditional method. So yeah, and in those days, the internet wasn't around for me to kind of check. Actually, I went into myself and thought, I've got to test this myself. The healthy skeptic and the healthy cynic came out. Was like, do these really work? And so through my practice, my cranial practice for 7 years, I tested them. And yeah, that these things, the body starts talking, the flowers start talking, and healing starts working with these. So it was more fortuitous, I would say.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about your flower essence range. And so what kind of flowers and plants why did you choose the ones in your range?
Yeah, no, again, I can't say that I chose them. Right? I think Dr. Batch was the same thing, and maybe yourself, and maybe for other producers out there, it's like you're going through something yourself, and then you're out in nature, and then that particular flower that maybe you haven't noticed before really starts to highlight, illuminate itself. You can't stop seeing this plant. That's when I knew that I need to make that essence. You don't know what that essence is for, and then you make the essence and you find that something inside yourself has got remedied. I believe Dr. Batch did it in that method. And so it was wildflower is very much my own healing journey. And even now, being drawn and attracted to certain flowers and plants, because of the work that you may be the same yourself, because of the work that we've done, it's not necessarily that we need to go through the ritual aspect of making them. There's other ways. The astral structures we with, working more directly with the spirit of the plant. So it's a sort of different relationship. But yeah, it's very much my journey into healing and into the world. So wildflower is that representation.
Yeah, great. So let's have a look at how they work because we're dealing with subtle energies.
Mm.
And so both you and I really love kind of like exploring this realm, don't we? Like, what are we actually dealing with here?
What is subtle energy?
What is subtle energy? You know, how do, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've really dived into it a lot. And so tell me what you've been looking at recently and what your kind of understanding is of how these essences work.
Yeah, so I think, if we look at essences as like, I like to see them as a signature. Each signature is unique, like we have our in our own. And so when I've started to do remote healing, so I've been a cranial psychotherapist for many years, but since lockdown, I've been doing the remote healing work. And so in my spiral bridge, in my astral structure, I've got all my team and additional teams. But I didn't quite understand how the crystals kept on showing up. And I work with crystals because I use crystal geodes, but primarily wildflower. Yes, we use mineral, but it's mainly flower essences. And then I found within in my remote healing work that it wasn't like the flowers didn't turn up, but it was who did turn up was the mineral kingdom. And I call them earth angels now because I've never worked with them in this way. That I've realized they're psychic surgeons. I'm not saying flower essences aren't either. It's just it's led me down this, how do flower essences work? Because I was starting to analyze how are the crystals working in my session. And in part of what we do is with cranial, we do something called cell talk. So, each cell is like a mini me. And if we can sort of tune in and start to heal the cell, then almost putting the cell back into the body in this sort of domino effect, and the body's getting better and people are getting better. I'm seeing how the crystals and the flowers, but the crystals are getting in behind pain body aspects that the body needs to go through and heal. And over this period of time, I'm like, how is it? Why is it I'm working so much with crystals? What's going on? Now, I know I'm a primarily body worker, hands-on. And so I start looking at the cells themselves. Obviously, we're doing the cell talk and letting the cell of the individual speak to us. But what is the crystals doing it? What is their signature, these earth angels? And so I've started to research Jim Osherman, Dr. Jim Osherman. He's a biologist and research scientist. And in his book, he starts talking about that the cellular structure is crystalline, liquid crystal, just like these these sets that we're looking on, just like our phones, that's a liquid crystal. But our cells are liquid crystals. And there are configurations of the cells themselves, the crystals themselves, that when they're in alignment, in orderly, almost regimental lines, then the membrane of the cell moves more freely and the cell itself operates better. But when they're all sort of jim-jammed and coagulated, the movement of the cell doesn't work so well. And so I think because I've come from that hands-on body work aspect, that the crystals have come in resonance with my past and what I do. And so I'm thinking their signature, just like the fluorescent signature, is affecting the crystalline structure of the cell itself. So many things affect that, like electromagnetics, Wi-Fi, and they've done research to show that the nice orderly then gets mashed up. Um, and so that sort of crystalline structure working with energetics, the sort of subtle energies, as fluorescences are, as crystals are, as the nature intelligence that we work with. I mean, the very nature of remote healing is working with subtle energy. Gravity is subtle energy, right? And we were mentioning it before, the very word subtle energy almost feels like there's something weaker about it than this kind of powerful energy. But curiously, our cells react to subtle energy. And we're figuring out or trying to figure out how the essences or flower essences or these signatures influence and work with us. I mean, even water, isn't it? We use water as the carrier. It's the subtle energy that's within that water picks up. It's not gross energy, it's subtle energy. And so I think another word for subtle energy is torsion fields.
Mm.
So astrophysicist and will use torsion fields to describe gravity and things like that. And we know how effective gravity is. And then we go back to the cell, and there's this really funky thing that the cell does called stochastic resonance. And we're not sure exactly, all our cells are doing it right now as we sit here and listen to this. But it may be part of the evolutionary process that the cell, when it was floating around doing whatever it was doing, it used this stochastic resonance, which is the ability of the cell walls to pick up the subtle vibrations that are in the cacophony of sound all around it. And then what it does, it's able to fine tune it and then amplify it. So sound engineers use stochastic resonance to clean up sound. If there is a sort of some sort of static in the background, they use it to clean up the sound. Cells would have used it to find its way round. But this subtle energy with the stochastic resonance that seems to work with these subtle vibrations that seem to emanate all through the universe. Curiously, this subtle energy that is there's a sort of the electromagnetic, magnetic and the electrical systems of our body. The electrical system stays very much within this sort of area of the skin. The magnetic aspect, it stays very much within the auric field. All of them emanate, and over distance, they become weaker and then disintegrate. But this thing called torsion waves don't. They're informational waves that are created by, I think, particle and wave. That we are particle, but we are wave. And in that wave is the torsion wave. That stuff does not decrease as far it goes outside the universe. It still holds that information, but that's still considered as subtle energy. So I think all of this, what is subtle energy and how does it work? Well, flower essences, mineral essences, really show us through the cellular structure how it works. Of course, it works in the energy body too. I think crystal essences or crystals work more, from my experience, from the physical body, and the flower essences, of course, can work with physical, but there seems to be, from my experience with wildflower essences, more in the energetics. That's my experience so far.
Right. Okay. So the plant spirit essences and the unique frequency can almost like um, through this subtle vibration that they provide, can just help to restructure that kind of subtle layer of the cell. So eventually that can kind of integrate into a physical healing, but actually we input the healing, if you like, or the rebalancing at that crystalline and at that emotional kind of subtle energy kind of level. Because, like you use the example of water. And so yeah, we've got water picks up the subtle, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
emotion, it's connected to the emotional realm. It's connected to love, actually, in the Celtic tradition. It's and maybe other traditions as well. But it's that subtle and memory. It has the quality of absorbing and recognizing the feelings in a room, what's being felt within a space, and the energy in the space, rather than kind of like anything physical in the space. And so then gets kind of almost like imprinted, or the water holds that frequency, and then can either and then for example with a plant spirit, then that becomes a remedy. And
Yeah.
so, if you've studied or looked at Veda Austin's work as well, she's taken it in other directions. And so we work with it in this kind of like this plant spirit realm. But this combination of water and plant spirits
Mm.
it's kind of, it's subtle, but it's not powerful. It's not powerful. I think they get underestimated, plant
Yeah.
spirit essences, in their capabilities. But I love this idea of like us being holographic as well. And this,
Mhm.
because I work in this way as well with my clients. And so, but just in a slightly different way. I work with an astral aspect of my client, that then when it gets to do the healing and clearing work on the energy field, and then when it gets reintegrated into the rest of the energy field, then that is the kind of like the clearing or the healing, if you like, taking place and integrating. And you work like that, but at a cellular level. So you'll speak to one particular cell with your plant spirit team. Is that how you work? And
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it? It's like the particle and the wave, isn't it? In the quantum physics, we're particle and wave, and it's treating it's nothing new, but it stands very much almost in the opposite direction from our normal treating the cell as an individual chemical process. But with these subtle energies, you're treating the wave. the waveform that is the emanation of the physical. And so the essences with their signatures, with their healing, come and treat the outside aspect of it. So when we do cell talk, again, I'm always guided by the client's higher self. And I ask, is that something they want to do? And if it is, then I ask them to present a cell and however it presents itself. If it starts to look really boxy and really tight and denser colors, there's aspects to that it should be more globular, more free flowing. There are 3 layers to each cell. So then you start to feel into those energetic aspects and then see if you can help repair them. But also taking this subtle energy even further through the remote work, and you may do this already, is because I'm sort of coming into this work through body work. Now in the astral structures that we use, spiral bridges, etc., what I'm finding is that now I'm being guided to actually step back even from the cell structure, the anatomy, and look at its waveform, so its auric field, and therefore treat the energy, the subtle energy of the structure, which we're doing on a bigger scale, aren't we, with the auric field, but or even asking the liver or showing asking us to see the liver, access the visual on the liver, then it's almost like you double close your eyes to then pick up the more subtle aspects of what's going on, again treating the wave. So this subtle energy, yeah, like we say, it's almost like we're sort of pre-programmed that it's got to be powerful and a strong drug, the fittest shall survive, when actually the whole world is created out of subtle energies and torsion fields. It's the same thing, a few little different tweaks. So yeah, I use the cell as a way to communicate to the individual. Look, when I was studying this stuff with Upledger Institute, I'd had an illness that I was really struggling with, and I was on the 5th level of this hotel. And I was determined to walk up those stairs between every module that we were doing. By the time I got to the top, I was out of breath, but I was determined to keep my cardiovascular going. And so we started to work later on in the afternoon, started to work with a certain particular part of the immune system, because there's such a huge amounts of different aspects of the immune system. This one particular part, when we spoke to it, was like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And it wasn't, so therefore, it wasn't functioning properly. So it's a reflection of my own belief at that time. We corrected that. I promise you, after that module, I didn't skip up those stairs, but by the time I got to the 5th floor, I wasn't out of breath. And I'm trying to find if there are other levels I would have walked up. So it's curious how quickly things can happen with subtle energy, and also when you start to work with this sort of cellular aspect. And now this stepping back and working with the auric field. I know that's not new, but for me, being a healthy skeptic, healthy cynic, I need to understand that. Hence, deep diving into what's crystals? How are the crystals working in my life? How does that work? And like we said in the beginning, this isn't empirical. We're taking what we do to the next level, and I don't think anyone challenges what we do more than ourselves in this work.
Yeah, and also, just to kind of like just expand a little bit about how the plant spirits work in this realm as well. So it's not that we're just kind of asking the plant spirits to come in and just repattern something and then someone's fixed. For me, the importance of working with plant spirit essences and with the plant spirits is that they bring things up for us to see, so that we can actually bring conscious awareness to it and we can actually look at it, face it, and then integrate it. And so it's that awareness of what's going on for us. And I appreciate not everything needs a story, and that we can get lost in those stories sometimes. I get that, I've been there. But there is this kind of like this need that we have for kind of shining the light of awareness into those kind of unresolved aspects of the psyche, into those darker corners of the psyche, so that we can really bring balance and healing on that subtle level and on that psychic level. And so I know that for you, you talk about the plants being spirits being your guides and your teachers and your healers. And so
Mm,
why don't we kind of talk about those three different aspects of the plant spirits as well?
mm, mm,
This idea that they're guides. What
mm.
what what do you mean by
Yeah,
that?
like what does that mean? Like how does that happen? I think firstly, taking just a step back from that bit, what you've just said about it's almost like in our, particularly in our Western sort of way of medicating ourselves, is we've got a headache, we take the headache tablet, and then we don't change anything. We don't stop drinking the beer or drinking more water or looking at, we just take the pill. It's like we renounce our responsibility. And when we work in plant spirit healing, in plant spirit medicine, it's a relationship, isn't it? And so then moving forward to this guidance, how do we get that guidance? We have our team, we are producers, so we have that antennae or that wiring for it. But what about for the people who may be listening here or listening later? And so the guidance, I think, comes through, it's almost like a bridge, isn't it? How do we bridge that? And it's intuition and those sort of tools, whether it's pendulum, whether it's or any sort of biofeedback mechanism that we can start to use to build a bridge between ourselves and the flower spirits themselves
So
through, sorry.
does that start with like how we choose which plant to work with, how we choose which essence we need to take?
Yeah, so again, that's I personally, I think we let go of what we think, and even the question of which one, and it's more, what do I need right here, right now? What do I need to help me with A, B, and C? Almost it's asking them that question through intention and then using the medium of pendulum, craniosacral rhythm, intuition, feedback. That's the guidance because once that feedback comes through, I mean, we could sit with our clients for hours and they still haven't told us about stuff that actually is really poignant to what they need. But when we cross that bridge and use intuition and ask them for guidance, numerous times it's like a veil is lifted. And it's astonishing the combination that comes in. And you sit with the client almost like, does this work? And they're like, oh my God, I didn't tell you about that, but that is so reflective of what's been drawn in there. So then that's the first part is the guidance. The guidance. The teaching comes from what is that flower good for that then is that you've been attracted to through your intuition. And then that teaching is that's the relationship that and I know you feel the same. It's the relationship that we have with the spirit of the plant that is so important that we don't just willy-nilly take bluebell because we've heard that it's good for communication. We look at what it is that, why is it that we need that? Because it may not actually be the throat chakra that we need to work with, it's the solar plexus. So another remedy might come up because it's not trying to find the words that you need, it's the confidence. And so when we let go and we try, and we can do this with essences, right? Because they're non-toxic. From our experiences that if they don't work, if our bodies don't need them, they don't work, right? So it's that the guidance is the start, the opening, the crossing of the bridge of the relationship with the plant spirit, I feel.
Yeah, and that intuition. I know Rudolf Steiner
Yeah.
has intuition as part of the three powers, the three psychic powers: intuition, imagination, and inspiration. And so, and even though they're kind of, he lists them separately, they're all intermingled. And so, if we can develop those aspects of ourself, this is where a lot of our power comes from that spirit realm, through the imaginal realm, and inspiration and intuition. I think inspiration is seen by Steiner as kind of like a higher aspect of intuition,
Yeah,
and
that's curious, the inspiration, because in the Druids, with the Druids, we it's the Arwen. The
Yeah.
Arwen is the inspiration from the goddess, which is creative. It's fleeting, but we tried to capture it. I didn't know that about that. Steiner presented that as part of a an intuition that the that worked. That's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I think he kind of talks about it as in, in intuition, work, and inspiration have to come through the astral layer. We're so
Okay.
intimately connected to the astral plane of consciousness, and inspiration and intuition have to come through that plane of consciousness. And intuition is generally thought of coming from the astral place, whereas
Okay.
inspiration comes from a higher kind of divine place.
Ah.
But we have to cleanse our astral body in order for inspiration to come through cleanly, and for our intuition to work better, because it's always at that emotional astral level that most of our kind of karmic stuff gets kind of imprinted into the energy field. Most of the um, wounds that we carry, the kind of unprocessed stuff, things we pick up, is generally on that, not always, but generally on that emotional astral level. And so working with our astral body and purifying that, cleansing it through healing work, energy work, inner work, shadow integration, all of that, we can actually strengthen our psychic ability. But we can do it all through the imaginal realm, which is our own life force, our kind of conscious realm that we can work with. And it's just, we've been conditioned into thinking that the imaginal realm is literally that, just your imagination. But
Yeah.
actually, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so powerful.
So
And
powerful.
so, yeah. And so I know that I'm kind of touching on this a little bit, which reminds me of the course that we're teaching. We're kind of doing this webinar in advance of our course, because we just feel that this imaginal realm and strengthening our kind of ability to navigate it and work within it really helps us in so many areas of our life, whether it's spiritual, whether it's healing, whether it's relational. And so yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's a big part of my work. And so the plant spirits have really helped me to fortify that within myself, develop that aspect of the inner space and the inner world, and help me to cleanse it so that I can work in a much more effective way. And so that brings us on to the teachers aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of people ask me all the time, somebody asked me last weekend actually at a conference, is what do you think about the shamans in the Amazon receiving the information directly from the plants of how to create kind of combinations of plants for remedies or for ayahuasca, etc.? Do you think it's true? And I was like, of course, absolutely, of course. When you work with plant spirits, you can't fail to receive teachings and information from their realm, from the inner realms, from the underworld, whatever part of the spiritual realm you're connecting into. And so, because the plant spirits work in those spaces, they can help us to understand ourselves at that level and understand the nature of reality at that level, because we've almost kind of forgotten. We come from the astral realm. We've come there as a disincarnate spirit from that realm into a physical body, and with this through the veil of forgetfulness, and we've forgotten about this vast, vast kind of multiverse that we live in, these other worlds that actually exist. And so lots of kind of wisdom, lots of kind of information can be brought to us through the plant spirits. So what example do you have that, where you've been taught directly from the plants?
Yeah, I just to echo what you've said, I think us humans, we need reminding of where not where we're from, what we're grown out of. And these guys have been akin and running parallel with us for eons. They were the shining ones, the good neighbors. They've worked with us for so long. It's so important. And even though we may understand the concepts, we still got to implement them. And so the teaching part of it is almost like the guidance is like, come, come sit, let me show you. And then now you're sitting and listening. Let us then teach you or share this teaching. And that teaching would be, again, from my experience, that teaching would be what it is that you asked the help for from the plant allies. And so, for an example, snowdrop, snowdrop. It's the flower of the goddess. It's one of the first, if not the first, flowers of spring in the UK. And if you look at just before snowdrop comes up, it's the deepest part of winter when everything looks like it's dead and there's no leaves on the trees and it's cold and wet and you're almost like, mother, where are you? You've abandoned me. And then the snowdrop comes up and it's this promise of renewal and this aspect of the goddess coming through or through snowdrop. And what snowdrop presents is this, the goddess energy to say, no, 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 I didn't abandon you. I was just sleeping, and just that reminding yourself to rekindle your relationship with the divine feminine, with nature. So that teaching isn't just lovely words, it's then when we then ingest or use the essence, that signature, that frequency starts to work on the body to help us work with that aspect that maybe we felt abandoned or alone. So the teaching shows us that, oh my gosh, that here I am today feeling that experience, and I hadn't quite understood that. So now that insight, that teaching is illuminating what the signature is about. So for me, as an example, I mean, we've got loads of examples, right? But snowdrop is that one. I suspect you've got a few there that you could offer too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one that springs to mind is in my flower essence range. I've got a group of essences called the Venus Pathway,
Mhm.
and that group of essences came to me when I was going through a really difficult time in my life, and I'd actually had to disconnect from all of my spirit team, and so I
Mhm.
was plant spirit free for a while, and just going through a really deep inner process of transformation. I had to be on my own to do it. And then slowly these plant spirits started getting my attention. And first it was Rose. And so I started taking Rose, and Rose taught me one thing. And then the apple tree just appeared. This really old apple tree was discovered in the corner of the garden that had been all overgrown. And so the apple tree, this old, wise apple tree, just kind of came into the garden. Well, it was already there, but was kind of came into my awareness. And so then I got taken into another part of my healing process with apple. And then foxglove appeared in the most magical way with this hill of about 250,000 foxgloves opposite
Wow.
my house, just appeared. And so that lured me in. And then vervain, that I had been trying to grow for years and just not being able to connect with. I'd missed the harvest. I'd missed the alignment on which I wanted to make the essence, because I work with the planetary alignments as well in my essences. Um, but vervain, I grew vervain, and it just started growing everywhere. So I had this abundance of vervain, and so these plant spirits just took me. They came to me. They took me on this journey of healing, and this particular pathway that it took me on through healing the inner child, through rebalancing sexual energies, through stepping into my power. It really was this shamanic process of death and rebirth through these four essences. And then when I was telling my friend, she was studying a master's degree on somatic embodiment, and I was telling her about this process that the plants had taken me on, and she was like, well, that's my process, the healing process that I'm working within embodiment. And
Mm.
so I was like, wow, this is like and that had been given to me from the plant spirits. And, I didn't I couldn't have made that up. I didn't recognize that path before I was actually on it. So we'd get given these beautiful, and as healers, we go first. And so we allow the plant spirits to heal us so that we can understand how or if they can be incorporated into our spirit team to help us within our healing work for others. And so yeah, that was my teaching through through Venus, actually, and the Venusian plants, because all of those particular plant spirits are associated with Venus and work through that water realm and that emotional body. So yeah, that was my journey.
And this aspect, and I think we touched it before on another webinar with regards to working in the astral structures, that we're finding out more about the essences, the signatures, their teachings, because we're working in these astral structures. And that's such a curious thing, that when we work in that way, that in these structures, that the actual aspects of, it's almost like the subtle energies in these structures are therefore more subtle, and so therefore we're getting more facets, more story, more teaching from them. And I think that we both concur that actually, it's almost like the spirits themselves will align themselves with the energetics of the individual, giving almost a bespoke aspect to the client or the individual, almost to the extent that, for that example, how much can we fully explain their teachings, because it's so bespoke and so unique for the individual person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this brings us on to the healer aspect of the plant spirits, is that what I've experienced is that in different situations, the plant spirit will almost kind of like emanate or express a certain aspect of itself. And so it's because plant spirits can be shapeshifters. They're not kind of set in either how they look, if you can see them on the inner planes, or how they operate. They're almost like elemental masters, really. They can change which aspect of their elements they want to work with or need to work with for a particular, it's whether it's their earth element, their water element, and so they can, yeah, just bring that through. So for example, when I was in the Amazon, usually mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris was very kind of like quite very loving towards me. She'd always kind of very protective, but she appeared as this kind of wrathful witch that was very kind of like, because I needed that at the time. I was kind of under kind of quite a lot of psychic pressure, let's say, from the Amazon jungle spirits. And so I needed that kind of like aspect of mugwort around me. And so she'd gone from this motherly aspect to this wrathful kind of like, if I didn't know it was mugwort, I'd be quite scared kind of spirit aspect. And so they express themselves in different ways for different requirements. And so when it comes to healing work, that same aspect of them, that same quality and ability gets brought through into the healing space as well. And so and I found that plant spirits know us almost better than we know ourselves, what we need.
Yeah,
And
nicely
so there's
said.
an aspect of, allowing, of course, when we work with plant spirits and we work with plants, intention is key. So we have to be part of that co-creative process. We have to step in with our intention of what we feel we want rebalancing. Then we have to allow the plant spirit the scope and the space to actually bring what's actually required.
Yeah, you're just surrendering it over to that, isn't it? And even that sounds pretty intense. Down in the Amazon there, right? I'm quite happy with the British flowers over here. But that's the journey, isn't it? And I think that, we're almost we're well to remember that the aspect and relationship that we start building in this way that we're speaking is healing in its very self, because the human collective consciousness is in need of aid, and that's our coming back to nature. And so these guys have always worked with that, and maybe the plant spirits and nature spirits, and maybe they're working even harder now because of this discord, this disengagement between us and the natural world. And I think it's really important that we to remember that they are friends and they are allies and they are here as helpers and teachers to guide us through painful times that we're experiencing, and to remind us that not to take it all so seriously, and to be joyful and to play and get silly. There's something spiritual about joyfulness. And I don't know about you, but sometimes working with the plant spirits, particularly certain ones, Bluebell, is a real character. And I've got to be very careful how I use Bluebell if I'm doing stage work or whatever, because Bluebell can really get me singing and dancing on stage. And to sort of shake up this almost seriousness around our healing. Look, I can certainly get serious with my healing, but they're here, and I think it's a very important part of looking at what we're doing here is that it might sound complex to people. It might sound almost far out and also unattainable. But the very fact that we are in this creature, in this body, we can do it because we're all from the web. We are all from it. And there are other aspects that they think that maybe our nervous systems were developed through the plant kingdom, and that's why the energy body, or the astral structure, astral body, the energy body, responds so well to the subtle energies, because through creation it was the flowers that created the nervous systems.
Ooh,
So yeah, I know it's
beautiful.
yeah, so it's a very beautiful thing working with these guys, and it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and sorry, yeah, and just to kind of talk about that perceived disconnection from nature, there isn't actually a disconnection from
no,
nature.
no,
It's a
no.
perception of that.
Yes,
But
yeah.
what there is, I see, is this fragmentation of the psyche of the modern mind.
Mm,
Of the modern human is this fragmentation. We're pulled in so many directions. We're kind of like really we can go into the history of how we've been slowly disconnected from our mother languages, or our, the land and the magic in the land and our mythology. We can go into all that, but there has been this kind of this kind of severing of our memory, and to what the land actually is, that we're not separate from it. And of course we pulled in so many directions as well, and we kind of like jumping from psychic work to working on a laptop to dealing with family members. We're kind of pulled in dealing with normal daily stuff. We're very kind of fragmented in how the mind operates.
mm,
And I think working with the plant spirits has really helped to kind of like weave kind of that fragmentation back together, and
mm.
help, because nature just reflect well, not just, but nature reflects our consciousness back at us, so that we can kind of see how how we're actually operating, how we're actually kind of functioning and relating to the world.
Mm.
So coming back to you've mentioned astral structures, and how one way that has really helped me to kind of like rebalance and kind of reframe and reshape my psyche, actually back towards this orientation towards nature, is working on the inner planes, and working with what the plant spirits have taught me is how to work with this astral light and how to work with astral structures. And this is exactly what we're going to be teaching in our upcoming course, is how to work in that way, but with the plant spirits. So, can you just explain how you work with an astral structure with the plant spirits, and how the plant spirits work within an astral structure, and what a structure actually is? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, yeah. And just to be clear, if people are struggling with the astral side of things, I know we had a good chat about it a little while ago. It's the energy structures, right? It's the as opposed to astral, like star way off in the universe. It's another terminology for energy structures. Um, I've been as you'll see on the course, there are many different types of astral structures, but they are co-creatively set up. So that co-creation is ourselves and nature. I mean, I suspect you can use other aspects, but this is where we're coming from, is that aspect of co-creation. And the astral structures allow, it's almost like a landing pad and a launching pad of spiritual change, because within them, you're safe to experiment, to open yourself up and to connect with guides or spirits in this way. So they're fantastic tools, enabling us to almost amplify what we do, whether we're doing ceremony, healing, meditating, or even communicating with them. They seem to be, as long as we set them up co-creatively, it's this union back with ourselves and them. For what I'm bringing to the course is spiral bridge. So we're using energy or astral structures through a spiral, certain types of spiral, that was, as I said, there are other systems that I've used, but this particular system, I don't think can I say a particular system? It was, I've sort of, again, like the essences, not really been looking for them. It was revealed through my working with wildflower and a particular aspect of wildflower. I thought this particular aspect was the communication diva. I thought, as we have different divas, different divas for things, I thought, well, if I ask the communication diva to come in to my work, it will help me with the working with flowers. I didn't realize that that then morphed into wildflower, and the essences, which then morphed into spiral bridges, which is actually coming from the she or the siddha. In my client today told me that in Wales they called it the siddhi, but up here in Scotland, I'm in Scotland, we call it the she, and it's another version, another frequency, another aspect of nature and intelligence. The fae being very much the flower aspect, again another aspect. So for me, presenting spiral bridges is this ancient, deep connection through spirals, and we really look at that and look at our ancient past with our ancestors. The spiral is one of the top three images that they use. So, as you mentioned, imagination, intention are really key to these aspects, and our commitment into rebuilding these bridges between ourselves and nature. And so the astral structures are really, I know we're going to be teaching it, but guys, they really are a cool bit of kit that really can take us into another level of our psychic abilities, our intuitive abilities, and they really work. I wouldn't do my remote healing unless I was in a structure like this, because I want a clear channel between me and my client. I don't want anything getting in the way. And so it's it's magic. It's a magical aspect, and through intention, imagination, these things is what we're going to share with people and how to set these up.
So it's working with those temporary inner structures. So we create it through our imaginal realm. We work with astral light. We understand what astral light is, how it functions, and then how to actually build and create
Mm.
forms, thought forms. Really, that's what we're working with, thought forms, for particular jobs and for particular things, and to amplify and to kind of create sacred space, because that's what your particular way of working with spirals creates, a sacred space, doesn't it, for which our plant spirit allies can work through really safely. And
Right.
when I first learned this from you a couple of years ago, my spirit team was suddenly like really close in my face, like when I opened a spiral bridge and invited them in. And I was like, oh, okay, right. So, yeah. And so it takes a while to kind of like,
Mm.
work out how to kind of moderate and kind of like, change and work with the spiral bridge yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's been a great tool for me because, like all sacred spaces amplify. So that means everything. Okay, your emotions, but also your psychic abilities, your connections, your kind of like understanding and perception of subtle energies gets amplified in these spaces. So
Mm.
it just facilitates our work. It facilitates psychic work. It facilitates inner work. And so, but there are different types of astral structures as well. I use other things. I use other tools and things and places and buildings that I create on the inner planes that all have a function and that have just, I couldn't work without them, basically.
Mm. And it's that we create them. It's not like it's my version, your version, here you are, get on with it. It's no, look, we're co-creating the creativity. So people who come on the course, it's there. Okay, we give you the outline, but it's they make it, because it's so important to have this relationship back. And I believe in every time we open up Spiral Bridge, whether I can say this or not, there's a gossamer of connection that goes back to the web that really, again, I hope is going to be able to help connect this collective consciousness that we're all attached to, whether we like it or not. And so there's something really important about the work, not just on an individual, not just for humanity, but this relationship with nature is really, really important. And these astral structures really do it. And we see so much, don't we, with our clients? It's not placebo. It's not we the animals and babies that I work with in these astral structures, they get better results than I did when I was doing hands-on. So yeah, it's magical.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think we've come to the end of our webinar, which just flew by as usual when we're diving into these exciting and interesting topics, and the ones which are the most closest to our heart, and the fundamental practice actually at the School of Natural Esoterics is this nature and plant spirit connection. And so thank you so much, Paul, for, I don't know who else I could have, dived into this subject matter with apart from your good self.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, and so yeah, looking forward to teaching this course with you again. And thank you to everybody for joining us this evening.
Yeah, you're great.
And yeah, the webinar will be with you shortly. And yeah, thank you for your participation and for joining us.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Thanks.
everybody. Good night.